All right, I'm going to very briefly cover some things on some dry cooking methods. As we get into dry cooking methods, it's really going to make a lot of sense on why lessons 1 through 4 really set you up for caramelization and for browning, and how important that is. So we want to make sure we understand the dry cooking methods, and that's where lesson 1 through 4 is really going to come into play. We're going to look at the effects of dry cooking on the food items, and we're also going to kind of look at which food items are good to use dry cooking methods on. And so understanding the science of caramelization and the Maillard reaction in foods is really going to be important. So in lessons 2, 3, and 4, specifically lesson 4, we really looked at like how to get the Maillard and caramelization and what it does to food items. So when we look at dry cooking, we are looking at air or fat. So there's a lot of flavor development because of the browning of the sugars and the proteins. So dry cooking is developing flavor. And so as we covered in lessons 2 and 3 and 4. Caramelization is where sugars are caramelizing. So we're looking at starchy and kind of sugary food items, bread crust, cookies. But one of the main things for really kind of know from learning target 1 is that water will not get hot enough to brown sugars. And so when if we want to actually subdivide down dry cooking methods, we're going to cover these. There's about 8 of them, and you have dry cooking without fat. And so we're essentially just using hot air. And then we have dry cooking with fat. And then there's different levels of fat for each one of those. And I'll make a separate video for that one. So like in broiling is going to come above the heat is going to come above the food items. So you have the food item and you have the broiler. If you have an electric stove, you have a button that says broil, and that means the top element and the heat is coming up there from the top. When you're broiling a food item, you typically, as the picture here shows, you put it really close to the heat. And so you want to raise your rack really, really tall, and you put it up really close to the heat, and you get that broiling. And so it's kind of like, it's a lot like grilling, but the heat is above. If you're going to do something fatty like cheeseburgers, you typically put it in a pan where the grease is allowed to drip down. So either it has a rack like what you see in the picture, or it has holes in it called a broiler pan. The underneath side of the broiler pan is where the fat drips down and juices. And I usually line that with a little foil, or I put just a little bit of water in there. And that helps keep that, because it's so hot, it will help keep that from getting all black and gross and kind of nasty. So heat source above food, broiler. And this is only going to be for things that are already tender. So young chicken, fish, some fruits and vegetables, tender cuts of meat. Cheeseburgers are good for that, steak or something like that. Grilling is really similar to broiling, except the heat is now below, and the food drips its juices down onto the heat source, and you get this like smoke, and that imparts some flavor onto the food. So grilling, heat source is below. Grilling is usually very hot, and it's usually very fast. And so this is kind of best for vegetables and fish, thin meats like steaks or pork chops or chicken breast, something like that. Grilling is not for like big, thick pieces of meat or things with bones in it and stuff. Barbecuing is a little bit different, and some people use grilling and barbecuing interchangeably, but they are kind of different. So barbecuing is generally classified as cooking over wood or with smoking, and there's all types of things that you can barbecue with. They even have these little pellets now, and they have a whole grill that you can just do like pellets or cold smoke. So barbecuing is generally going to be longer and slower. When you're doing that process, you're usually doing it for like hours at a time, and it's not like hot and fast. And barbecuing is going to be better for food items that are thick, that are large, that have bones, like bone-in chicken or a whole chicken, or even like cut up turkey. Briskets, like a big, huge piece of beef or a pork butt or a shoulder, something like that. Ribs are usually pretty good. So something that you want to go real long, real smoky. With grilling can be either like propane heat, or it can be like charcoal heat. So with barbecuing, it's pretty well predominantly something's on fire and you're burning to impart that flavor there. Roasting and baking are going to be a little bit different. I'm going to pause my video there.